I'm Regina. I'm 20 years old.
What is your Latina identity or your Latinidad?
I'm Mexican American.
Do you feel connected to your Latinidad? Do you feel Latina enough?
I definitely feel Latina. I think that just comes from like my family. I think just like our cultural practices. I feel like being able to speak Spanish like in the home, being surrounded by like my grandma who also speaks Spanish, and like we go to like church and we only will ever attend mass in Spanish, so that's very important to us. And like we always try to uphold certain traditions or certain holidays. But in terms of like feeling Latina enough, there are definitely times where like maybe I'll like compare myself to even like my cousins or even my cousins, whether they're in California or like in Mexico. And I just feel like, oh, like I don't think I'm at the same level as them. I feel like whitewashed. I feel like sometimes like a no sabo. So I think it just depends. I think also just the way I was brought up of feeling like it's more of like a little identity of me, but it's not like my entire identity. It's not something that I really like advocates a lot. So it's definitely something that I've definitely had to kind of like reckon with, especially being like in college. I feel like seeing a lot of like international students and be like, okay, like I don't think I'm at the same level of having like the same Latinidad as them. Like there's no way that we're both Mexican in the same sense. Like I think it's more of just like my parents were born there and like I just kind of like look it and maybe I'll speak it Spanish, but there are some times where I do feel like an imposter in that way.
What was your favorite piece of media as a child and why? Movies, TV shows, books, etc.
My favorite, honestly, was Wizards of Waverly Place. I loved watching that with my sister. I think I just like the idea of like being a wizard and like having to hide it, but like also having a friend like to kind of like confide in and like being this whole like family thing that you're doing it together. And I also really liked Hannah Montana. I just liked a lot of like Disney Channel, just like very like it girl shows. Like I loved like That's So Raven or like Sunny with a Chance. Like I just loved all those like decom movies. Like I love the Princess Protection Program. Like I just anything with like the Disney girls was like my favorite. Like High School Musical, Camp Rock. Like I still love those things even to this day.
Yeah. Did you feel seen in that media, like represented or related to?
I think a lot of the times I didn't really feel super connected. Like there was no way I could relate to like Hannah Montana or That's a Raven because they had like such different experiences of life. Like I can't relate to like having a double life. I can't relate to being able to see visions of the future. But in terms of like Wizards of Waverly Place, I feel like they tried to kind of have that balance of like, oh, Selena, like Alex Russo has is like her mom is like Mexican and she had like that one quinceañera episode and I was like okay like we see little hints of it, but what I liked is that it wasn't like her whole personality. Like her whole personality was that like she was sarcastic, you know, she like talked back, but she was also a wizard and she really cared about her family, but like she also was like very snarky and witty. So in those ways, I feel like I could pull like parts of her personality and integrate that into mine. Where like I don't have to be so upfront of like on Latina, this, and that. But like she can have an episode where she's like having a quinceañera, and another episode where it's like I really want to like make a clone of myself so I can go to this like shopping like sale that's happening down the street.
Yeah.
So in that case, but like I wasn't sure if I really like sought out representation in that way, but I definitely felt it when it was definitely like looking at like the Disney princesses, and I was like, okay, like there's some kind of gap happening here where like I'm not seeing myself versus like all these different like white princesses. So I think in those cases, like I saw representation, but I wasn't necessarily looking for it when I was looking at like my favorite shows, like Wizards
Question:
especially.
did you notice any of these feelings when you were a kid, or did you see them as you got more mature and older?
I do think it started a little bit when I was a kid. I think especially like around Halloween, where I was like, I think Halloween's such a time where like you really do look for someone that looks like
Yeah.
you because you want your costume to make sense and you don't want to have to like go out of your way to like get a wig and like just go super drastic different, especially when you're little. And like Disney being such a big part of my life, I was like, you know, like I'll be a Disney princess. But the only ones I felt like were available to me at that time was like Belle because she had brown hair as me or Pocahontas, but I felt even as a kid, I was like, this doesn't feel right. And Jasmine, I actually dressed up as Jasmine when I was a kid because I did think that she was the same, like that she was Latina, because I didn't have that understanding that like she was like Arabic. So I think in those times where I was like, you know, like I do kind of wish that like I had a kind of representation because
Mm-hmm.
I always loved Ariel, and I think that was because like Ariel was so different that it was easy for me to project of like, no, I like this one because she's different because she's a mermaid. But I think as I got older, I sort of realized, like, you know, I think I wish I would have had that when I was younger. I think, especially looking at like my baby cousins, and now that they have the representations of like Mirabelle and like Elena Alvalor, and I was like, okay, like those weren't things that I had when I was younger, but like, and being able to see it, and then I see like so like how much valuable it is, especially when they're watching things like Coco and they watch it all the time, and it's like, I had this when I was old enough to kind of understand, but for them to have it at such a foundational age, and for them to just have this representation to them, it's like normal because it's like, well, I grew up with this, so like I never saw that there was like any gaps. So I think that was really interesting that seeing it as like from my eyes as an older person and seeing it through like my younger like baby cousins to be like, okay, like they don't even see that there's an issue, but for me it's like I know that there's an issue. I know that this came about because there was a gap, so I'm glad in a sense, but I'm also sad. I'm like, oh, like I wish I had that for me. Like I didn't have to doubt, and like I would have to make like random Halloween costumes that kind of like fit. Like I remember I was like a ballerina princess pirate one year because it was like I couldn't find any box that like really looked like me, but I was like, I'll just create whatever thing that like I could be. Like it doesn't matter what skin color I have or like what I look like. Like I could just be this other like entity, I guess.
Do you think that any of that has had a lasting impact on you, like your self-worth or sense of belonging?
I do feel like it probably has like a long lasting thing where I'm just like, maybe there's a reason why they haven't made like a certain representation that like really fits me. But I think like a lot from what I've learned in like classes and that I've taken here is that because a lot of the representation that we've seen on screen has always been so like misconstrued and like just so like inaccurate, it's like why would I even seek representation on these kind of screens when it's like even if there was something that was like relatively similar, like it would just be wrong. And I would just try to like find pieces of myself that just don't match. And it's like, why would I want to relate to like what they believe a Latina looks like? It's like, oh, the only thing I'm seeing is a maid. Like, oh, I have to relate to this maid. And it's like, but I know that that in my heart is not a representation that I align with. Mm-hmm. But and that definitely takes a toll on you. Like if you only see people being represented as like, oh, like the maid or like the hot, sexy mama, this token Latina. So in those cases, I'm like, it's okay that I don't like see myself and I don't like, oh, I can relate to this person. But then I see like other people relating to like whatever big movies or TV shows or books. And I'm just like, I do wish I had someone that like I felt like really represented who I am in that moment. So I do think there is a sense of longing that I do kind of hope for, but I just feel like it's just something that either like it's just more upcoming, like in contemporary media that's happening right now that I see like, what, I do think I relate to this work right now. And I think in the future there will be more that I can look forward to.
Yeah. What do you wish your younger self could have seen in her media?
I definitely wish you could have seen Encanto. I love Encanto so much now at my big age. But I love that. And I also love the show Gordita Chronicles, which I am doing my work on. But like it truly is such a good show. I also love the fact because it's emphasizing this young Latina girl who's a little gordita. And I was like, I would have loved to see that. And I think another thing, I can't remember at the moment. But those are like the only ones that I think of. Because honestly, I know that you were talking about like Stuck in the Middle. I honestly, when it came out, I didn't really even watch it because I was like, there's just too many dang kids in that show to like keep track of. But and I think at that point Disney had already started going down, and I was like, you know what, this is just not my show.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I think those are like the big ones.
If you could change one piece of media from your childhood to gift to your younger self so that she could see you in it, what would it be and why?
Like what would younger me have wanted to see? I think kind of just a show of like a genuine like maybe like sitcom of just like a group of like Latinas, like all different and like all of them like in college. Because I felt like when I was younger, I genuinely had no idea that college was like a thing. Like I genuinely thought that was just like a movie thing. But to see like someone that looks like me, and I think about that a lot actually when I'm walking through campus and I see those groups of like little kids. And I was like, I walked past them. I'm like, I wonder if they look at me and they're like, oh my God, like someone that looks like me is like going to school here. Cause like I didn't have that. So I'm like, even just to have that as a representation of like a show. Cause I know they have like the Sex Lives of College Girls and things like that. But that one's more kind of like oriented towards like sexual freedom and things like that. But just someone of like, where it's not emphasized of like struggling, where it's like, oh, I have to do all these things to get these scholarships to get to the, get to the school and things like that. But just someone just genuinely just like, having fun, like enjoying their college life, balancing their lives. But like, it's not about like the family struggles, like, oh, their family's keeping them back from like going to college. Like, no, like maybe their family genuinely supports their endeavors of going to college. Because I feel like that's what I was thinking about beforehand, where like the real women have curves, where like the family is so adamant on keeping her like away from going to the scholarship to go to Columbia. And it's like, this gonna be fully paid. Like, why are y'all trying to keep her? And I think at the end of the movie that the mom doesn't even say goodbye to her. It's the dad that like drives her to the airport. And so I was like, the representation of things like that is it's a little harmful because it's like even when you do achieve certain things, it's like it's because it's like at the cost of like pushing away family. And it's like I don't really like those representations because I know like a lot of my friends, it's like our families genuinely support our endeavors to come, especially to USC. And I have a friend, and he was telling me that like his grandparents were like so adamant of like you need to go to the school. Like we would do what it takes for you to go to the school because it's such a good opportunity. And I felt the same way as well because like obviously we have like guilt about coming and about the financial aspect. But I remember I had a teacher when I told her about it, and she was like, "You deserve an education that puts you in debt." And at first I was like, "How dare you?" But then I was like, "No, like I understand what you mean. That like." You need to get these like really good like represent or these good opportunities and like do these different things for yourself that like you wouldn't expect yourself to do. And I think about that a lot because I think when it's like, oh, changing certain medias, it's like you just want to be included.
Yeah.
And it's like you just want to be able to see like that that's a possibility. Because I remember when I like graduated, I remember like I didn't know that the line of succession because my mom like she didn't graduate, so she had to get her GED. So I was like, okay, I'll graduate, I'll get my GED, then I'll get like an associate's. And then my mom was like, no, like you already got your high school diploma, like you don't need a GED. And I was like, I don't even know how this system works. It's like it's never been shown to me.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that is like misrepresented in TV where like my mom used to tell me, she's like, oh, growing up, we thought like if you just get straight A's, like you'll go to college and everything will be fine. But obviously that's a lie. So it's like just even just little things like that of showing like, no, like this is how like that process works. It's like it makes it so much easier because you see it like on screen. Like if you grow up with it, it's like, no, like these are possibilities and this is how the actual process works. And it's like I would have just wanted to see that. But I do like the Grey Anatomy thing, like just seeing yourself in these spaces where like you don't normally see yourself in. Like to have like a Latina version of like Hannah Montana, like, you know, kind of like a Selena type thing. But with the case of Selena, it's like we know that that was kind of like a once in a lifetime kind of person. But to see like it could just be a normal girl from like LA that happens to, or just little things like that.
Yeah.
I think are just so impactful.